Hello everybody and welcome to the KMT Traders channel. We are looking at the weekly review here. So what that is all of the trades that we analyzed last week and obviously let the market play out. So we're just going to review what we had predicted and then looked at the outcome. So as always, we always start with GBP USD. So let's get further into it. So what we anticipated last week was that we wanted to see if price could make that final push to an upside, and this would be the ultimate place, region where we would consider to make or break either the buy trade or a sell trade. But unfortunately, we didn't manage to get that, as we can see previously that this was enough price action here for the market to decide that this was clearly rejecting this zone here, and therefore this acting as a resistance. So that is one confluence there. The next step was to look for the structure. So as we can see that the structure had now basically broken that low. So as we know, as we break that low, we are switching and shifting that momentum. So what ultimately therefore led to is a short bias is really what we needed to see here. So now that we have our bias, we needed to find an opportunity to get into, and as we can see here, we had that firm rejection of our weekly key level, and that's at 1.2903. So with that, that was possibly the best entry point that we could get into with this analysis here. So approximately with that, a roughly 130 pips prior to that analysis, if you took upon that that key level trade there. So similarly with Euro USD, we had that same sort of situation here, where price had already been convinced that this had been rejected, this reversal zone. Couldn't really make that push to the upside very clearly. Had rejections up and down until we made that closure to the downside in the early afternoon Monday, sorry. With that closure to the downside, we also broke the uptrend. So these are two different sorts of confluences here. This also acting as a resistance now, and also breaking that structure low. Therefore, we were in a bias to the downside. And once again, we managed to close below, test that weekly key level, so here at 1.11365, and we had that push to the downside. And that move there, if you managed to take that risk, was roughly about 120. But in the end of the week, we had discussed that if you missed that opportunity there was a second opportunity if we had that rejection of this reversal zone. And as we can see, we did manage to get that. So roughly 35 or 30 odd pips to end Friday there if you manage to take that trade from our analysis. So we've also started to do daily videos, or daily analysis videos now. So this is to incorporate with the analysis videos. So what that does obviously is with weekly videos, you don't really get an understanding of the strategy, which I kind of realize now. So what I've tried to done is to take you through it on a day-to-day basis, so you can see and update what I'm thinking and what my bias is personally with the trade, with the analysis, and see if you agree. So if you agree with my analysis, then definitely check upon yours and then take the trade accordingly. But ultimately, just to make you aware of what I'm thinking really on that day. So that's what I'll be starting to do a bit more consistently. So definitely pay attention to that in the next week. Moving on to USD JPY, a very fast one here. And what we can see here is we had that very bullish momentum to the upside with a very short tapping into our reversal zone here, and with that bullish sentiment to the upside once again. So instantly we had that confirmation straight away, and roughly at max, roughly about 80 pips with that move. and ultimately it started to slow down at the reversal zone here, as we and as what we must anticipate with these reversal zones, that we have to expect that price will slow down. And as we can see, it reverted, and luckily it pushed back up if you managed to if you wanted to hold on to that trade. But instantly you could have just taken away 65 or 60 pips profit just from that one uptake trade. So yeah, so that's nothing too complex with USD JPY. Moving on to gold. I know gold was a big one this week. Yeah, so as we can see, we had that huge bearish pressure to the downside. And what we could say from last week's, well, the previous price action that had already been shown to us, we can see that price had kind of been difficult. Well, tried to move to the upside, but heavily rejected, and also tried to move to the downside, which was also heavily rejected. So we just had to sit back and almost be patient and wait for that breakout. And as we can see, price failed to move and close above. And as we can see here, we closed below. And we also looked at another confluence here is the breaking of that structure low. So just here. So with that closure, we had that confluence that this is a resistance zone. And if you did manage to take that impulse trade here, roughly, to the downside, if you managed to take that trade, you could have obviously made a lot more, but if you managed to roughly 500 pips with that, that's being very impulse here. So what I was explaining to well, I was explaining on the daily videos on the analysis on Thursday or Friday, I believe. As soon as we had that drop to the downside here, we was anticipating that push and pull back to the upside, and that would possibly be the best entry. Obviously, we didn't manage to get that, so we are still extending to the downside, that big impulse move. So that's something that we will look into for for gold for next week. Obviously, we'll cover that on the specific video. I don't think there was too much on the cryptocurrency side. Bitcoin making that push to the downside, nothing too drastic here. I think Ripple had a bit of push to the downside, I think. Yeah. So we had that push straight into our reversal zone with that firm rejection of the monthly, which gave the indication that we were selling low. Had that closure of the breaking that structure low here, and accelerated down to test our weekly level here again. So ultimately making a lot of moves on that on a short there, if you took that trade from the analysis. So 300 pips with that, very big move on that one. But yeah, so that'll be all for this video. Just to wrap it up, we are starting to incorporate, if you haven't noticed already, these daily videos. And as I mentioned before, they're basically just to incorporate the analysis aspect with the weekly videos that we are producing, so give you a better preparation for the next trading day. And you can also start to kind of understand our strategy a bit more better, so a bit clearer. Obviously, I want to help you guys with your trading, and hopefully with our method, you can start to see the results that we are getting. So yeah, so that will be all from us. We'll see you next week with the same video, and yeah, so thank you very much for listening, and I will see you next week.